And as I mentioned, a member of Congress
Yep.
is here. The top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee wants a congressional hearing on these strikes. He's my next source tonight, Representative Adam Smith. And thank you, sir, for being here, because you heard what the president has had to say at the White House. If he came to Congress for authorization for these strikes, do you think you'd give it?
Not under this definition. This is just an enormous expansion of presidential power. And it's absolutely true that the president's ability to carry out military strikes has been a subject of much debate for, over 200 years now, and certainly in the last several decades. But by and large, it's been fairly narrow. If you expand that to say anyone dealing drugs in the United States of America is subject to lethal U.S. military force, then you are talking about an enormous expansion of presidential authority. And then the explanation from the White House, as both of your guests have pointed out, I think opaque is a generous word. It started out, they were talking about fentanyl. And then we pointed out that no fentanyl comes out of Venezuela. One thing we know for sure about these boat strikes is none of them had anything to do with fentanyl, just given where they're at. And then we start hearing talk about regime change in Venezuela. So he's not even being very clear as to what the purpose of these strikes are. They've said that there are 24 different narco terrorist organizations identified. It's tough to find that list. It's impossible to find a definition of who these people are. So basically what President Trump has said, I'm the president, I want to kill these people, I'm going to do it, and you don't get to ask questions. And as we've tried to ask questions, the Pentagon, intel services have provided no answers to Congress to date. So that amount of power in the president that is unaccountable, not transparent, I think is incredibly dangerous.
So you haven't gotten any answers from the Pentagon, the Director of National Intelligence, anyone like that?
And we've asked, and by the way, this is somewhat bipartisan. I've spoken to Chairman Mike Rogers, good friend, chairman of the Armed Services Committee I work closely with. He hasn't gotten the answers either. Now, we want to have a hearing, and we're supposed to set one up. That's complicated by the fact that Mike Johnson has decided to dissolve the United States House of Representatives for the time being, which I think is a gross abdication of responsibility on a whole series of issues, but certainly to exercise oversight. So thus far, Pentagon, nobody has provided that level of detail. And you've been there with the media trying to ask those, or asking those questions as well, trying to get an answer. And those specifics are not there. So I just don't think we should let the president kill whoever he wants without explanation.
Yeah, I think that might have a fair bit of support. And of course, you're talking about the fact that the House has not been in session now, I believe, since September 19th because of the government shutdown. They'd blame that on Democrats. But speaking of the president coming to Congress, this was a big back and forth when we were inside the state dining room of the president yesterday. I want you to listen to what he said about notifying your body or seeking permission if he does begin to go after land-based targets.
We may go to the Senate, we may go to the Congress and tell them about it, but I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it. I think, in fact, while we're here, I think it's a good idea, Pete. You go to Congress, you tell them about it. What are they going to do? Say, gee, we don't want to stop drugs pouring in?
Does it sound to you like from that answer, like the president is aware of the concerns that you say are bipartisan about his authority here?
It sounds like he's aware of them. He's not terribly concerned about them. I do want to correct one point. We are not in session because of the government shutdown. We've had government shutdowns before. We have always been in session. In fact, when we have government shutdowns, we're in session more often than usual. We go through weekends because it's a crisis that needs to be resolved. I think that distinction is really important.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's the reason that Speaker Johnson is giving.
Well, but it doesn't make any sense because you can be in session while the government is shut down. So it just doesn't make any sense. And we can't have Congress not in session, not doing its job, in my opinion. You can have an argument about, oh, it's the Democrats' fault for the shutdown, whatever. We can have that argument. But whatever your position on that is, to say that the solution to it is to basically dissolve the United States House of Representatives, I strongly disagree with. But it doesn't sound to me like Trump takes Congress very seriously. Yeah, maybe we'll ask, maybe we won't. But that's why we need accountability in this. And if our position is, once you establish that drugs are a problem in the US, which is true now and it's been true for decades, then the president can kill whoever he wants to kill. No, I would not sign up for that. I would want a lot greater specificity. Who are we targeting? And for how long? And what's it going to cost? Let's say we do this for 2 or 3 years and we kill hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Do you think we'll wake up the day after that and people will no longer be trying to sell drugs in the US? I don't, because this is really very much a demand problem as much as it is a supply problem. And remember the assets we're committing here. You talked about the aircraft carrier, the B-2s, sorry, B-52s, everything we're sending down there. This is enormously expensive. How long do we intend to engage in this? And then if we go violating the sovereignty of how many ever countries, if we take that step, now we're alienating, potential allies, countries, all kinds. It is a huge thing to do that the president is doing, I think, entirely too casually.
Yeah, and it moves the carrier from, the Middle East or by Europe. And it is real questions about the foreign policy and where they're putting their attention now. Can I ask you, speaking of the government shutdown, though, because one part of this that hits really hard is that the military doesn't get paid during the government shutdown. And the Pentagon confirmed today that they got a $130 million donation that they plan to use. It is from an anonymous friend of the president's, as he described it yesterday. He didn't say who this person was. And this is to pay members of the military as the shutdown is going to go on. And we had questions about the donor's identity and if they have ties to foreign entities or interests. A White House spokesperson referred us to the Pentagon and Treasury. The Pentagon then referred us back to the White House. The Treasury did not respond immediately when we asked for comment. As
been there, by the way, but yes, yeah.
And what is your what are your questions about that? And are you okay with it? Because it does mean that some members of the military will get paid when typically they would not.
It's not going to begin to cover the cost of paying the military to begin with. And no, I'm not okay with it. I think we have a system of government. We have a representative democracy, and we should work through that system of government. Once we've privatized it, that takes the power out of the hands of the people. And look, we should be in and negotiate. I think we should pass bills to pay the military. We could do that if Mike Johnson had us in session, but he doesn't. And that's what's really troubling about this is the flat refusal to negotiate. I've used this line many times, but President Trump will negotiate with Hamas, but he won't negotiate with Democrats. And the thing is, that's the problem with the filibuster in the Senate. You need Democratic votes. And you're asking us to just vote for the Republican budget. And then you say, we're not going to negotiate. We're not going to talk about it. And we've done in past shutdowns. We voted to fund the military. We voted to fund a variety of different things during the course of the shutdown. We ought to be in session, working, doing our job, and trying to find a way out of this and to mitigate the damage in the meantime.
Congressman Adam Smith, always appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thanks, Caitlin. I appreciate it.